The headlines on RT International: a live streaming anti-Trump art project which was meant to demonstrate the unity of protesters is shut down due to violence. Innocence lost. RT hears from Syrian children who have had to endure tragedies most adults would even struggle to cope with. A memorial to Aleppo's war dead stirs controversy in Germany, as it turns out to be an almost exact copy of a barricade reportedly built by jihaddists in Syria. Also,
at the end of the day, you have to trust somebody.
Who do you trust?
No one.
However, some organizations have usurped the right to censor so-called unreliable media outlets, with the Daily Mail becoming the latest victim of the apparent witch hunt. It's midday in Moscow. Thanks for joining us on RT International. An anti-Trump art project designed to continue until the president was no longer in power has just been shut down. The project, called He Will Not Divide Us, was launched by Hollywood actor Shia LaBeouf along with two other artists. They installed a camera there on the museum's wall in New York, inviting people to protest. However, the museum has withdrawn its support, saying the exhibit became a flashpoint for violence. The 24/7 live stream then became a black screen with the words, "The museum has abandoned us." Here's Caleb Moppin.
Starting on Inauguration Day, artist Shia LaBeouf led people in repeating and chanting the phrase, "He will not divide us," in front of a camera here outside the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, New York. It was intended to be a kind of protest against Donald Trump, but pretty soon, things got out of hand.
Divide us! Must ensure the existence of the white people. He will not divide us!
Hitler did nothing wrong. Hey! Yeah, why do you attack me?
Trump supporters and others who intended to troll or mock the project continued to show up.
He will not divide us! He will unite us!
Scuffles broke out. Police were stationed around the museum 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now the museum has announced that it's pulling the plug in order to protect the safety of its hundreds of thousands of visitors and patrons.
It clearly was not working as it intended to. If the intention of it is to not be divided, yet obviously it's creating violence, then it's not working.
If that's the message that the museum was trying to fund, like, it's a good message, but if it's causing too much chaos, then completely understand it.
It kind of showed the opposite. I mean, there were fights here and all that, and it seemed like people were divided.
Yeah. It sucks.
I think they should keep it going. I mean, I don't think it's gonna cause violence. It's only the people that did cause the violence. They should be the ones that are being, you know, persecuted.
It's an interesting social and art experiment, but ultimately I don't think it worked, which is too bad.
Now, the artist says that he's been abandoned by the museum. He himself was arrested in a scuffle.
Not divide us. You will not divide us. You will not divide us.
Now, the mantra of the project might have been, "He will not divide us," but ironically, it seems to have highlighted just how divided Americans really are. Even here in a solidly liberal metropolis, in a kind of bohemian enclave outside of an art museum, Americans clearly just don't see eye to eye. Caleb Moppin, RT, New York.
Joining the protest against Donald Trump are several big international companies like Apple and Starbucks, which have publicly spoke out against attempts to impose travel restrictions. William Whiteman now looking at the possible motives behind their stance.
Introducing the vanguard of the anti-Trump revolution, a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Starbucks now weighing in on the temporary travel ban placed on Syrian refugees. The company says it plans to hire 10,000 refugees over the next 5 years.
They're only fractionally better than the people who started selling "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts for $10 a pop at Eric Garner protests. 10,000 jobs for 10,000 refugees over the next 5 years. Wonderful, you say. How noble. But what if I told you that only amounts to a 4% increase on Starbucks' current global workforce? At their predicted rate of expansion over the next 5 years, Starbucks are only going to have to employ 1 refugee for every 3 stores. So what does all this show you? Well, clearly they care more about being seen to care about progressive values than they actually care about said progressive values. If Starbucks really cares about refugees, then where were they when almost half of their potential future employees were literally drowning in the Mediterranean throughout 2016? Your head CEO alone took home 21.8 million last year, guys. Can you have coughed something up? The truth is, these days, corporate activism sells. Everyone's getting involved. Starbucks, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all of which, by the way, share a pathological love of tax avoidance. I mean, sure, you can make the whole, oh, at least they're doing something argument. But by allowing corporate giants like these to exploit human suffering and social unrest for the sake of highly profitable faux altruism, we're only helping to prop up the very system that continually gets us into these messes in the first place.
In the race for the French presidency, the latest polls predict that independent candidate Emmanuel Macron would beat the National Front's Marine Le Pen, that in the second round run-off. But as the whole recent US election showed, polls cannot always be trusted. In that race, Hillary Clinton here was expected to win. That's not the only parallel drawn between her and Macron. Both were establishment figures. Clinton spent years as Washington's top diplomat, while Macron held the post of finance minister. At the end of the day, though, both accumulated huge fortunes by the start of their campaigns, while Macron has become a media favorite, just like Hillary.
Emmanuel Macron has become a real media chouchou. That's French for darling. Just have a look. 20 front pages in less than a year. He's quite the star.